I'll call the meeting to order, and Amy, can you do roll call, please?
Yes. Committee member Wall.
Here at last.
Committee member Simon.
Here.
Committee member Lang is absent. Committee member Burtis.
Here.
Thank you. Committee member Alden.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Ruiz not able to make it tonight, and then Chair Johnson.
Here. Should we split the flag?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Open time for public comment regarding non-agenda items. Do we have any people attending for open period?
We do not have anyone online. I don't see any email.
And that just to refresh my memory, that letter that came in, we're going to review that during that item.
Yeah, so that public comment was specific to agenda item 4B.
Okay, just want to make sure. Approval of meeting minutes from October 18th. Now, I was not here. Is anybody, and they were attached to the meeting minutes or the meeting agenda. Does anybody have any comments to the meeting minutes?
I do not. They look good to me.
Can I get a motion for approval?
I will move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Abstaining, Dave Johnson. That wasn't here.
And
Oh, okay. General business. I understand we have a presentation for the 2021 greenhouse gas inventory and building inventory data. And Christina O'Rourke is sick today. Oh, we wish her well. So Phoebe's going to step in.
Yes, so slight change in agenda here. Christine sends her apologies, she's not able to make it tonight. So I'm just going to go over some of the slides she was planning on sharing, and then if you all have any questions that I can't answer, I'll pass them on to her and she'll get back to us. So this is our 2021 greenhouse gas inventory report. These inventories are completed annually through the Marine Climate and Energy Partnership, which Christine is the sustainability coordinator for. And for our last inventory was 2021. This is for the last inventory we had was 2020, and this is the 2021 update. It is an activity-based inventory, so that means that it's only looking at activities that produce greenhouse gas emissions within Corte Madera's boundaries. It's not a consumption-based inventory, which would include upstream emissions from production of goods that are consumed in Corte Madera. And so there's that distinction there, and the difference is really that activity-based emissions are a subset of overall emissions. So if we were able to calculate consumption-based, it would likely be a much larger number, but that's much harder to pin down. It's much harder to track that data. So this is what the inventory breaks down for 2021. There's not a huge amount of change from the 2020. Emissions were 73,546 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. And like previous years, most of these emissions are coming from transportation, with the second largest category being natural gas use in buildings.
Can I ask questions now, or do you want to wait until later?
Maybe I'll hold them until the end.
I'm trying to remember.
So this is a comparison looking back at all the years that we've had inventories. Overall, emissions are down 29% since 1990. That's the baseline that we're looking back to and comparing to. because we have the adopted goal in our climate action plan of 40% reductions below that 1990 level by 2030. So there's, as you can probably tell from the graph, only a slight change from 2020 year. It's about a 1% change. So in 2020, we were 28% below 1990 levels, and this 2021, we're 29% below 1990 levels. And we need to reduce another 11,000 metric tons to reach that 2030 goal. Taking a closer look at those categories of emissions, transportation.
Can you minimize the box? Or, oh, I guess, oh. Hi, Adam.
We want to minimize Adam. No.
That's okay. I
No,
totally understand.
Okay, got that out of the way.
Thank you very much for that. Now I see that it wasn't blocking anything, so.
Well, it might be blocking something in other slides, so good. Okay, so this is transportation, which is 71% of community emissions. These emissions are mainly from passenger vehicles. So you can see the breakdown, the top there, 75% from passenger vehicles, 24% from commercial, and then a tiny sliver from public transportation. Emissions from this sector have been declining, but it's primarily due to more efficient and non-fossil fuel based vehicles rather than a reduction in driving overall. So if you look at the green bars, that's showing vehicle miles traveled. Those have remained pretty constant, while the red line showing emissions has gone down.
Is this, I'll say my comment. Sorry, or my questions.
So, and then waste is 2% of community emissions, pretty small amount there. There has been some fluctuation. Waste disposal overall has gone down, and then also emissions from waste has gone down due to better waste separation. So less organic materials going into the landfill where they produce methane. Water is an even smaller amount of our emissions. Our water agencies, where our water comes from, are doing a lot of work to reduce those emissions even more. And same with wastewater, that's also a very small portion. And our waste facility is producing biogas, so making good use and not emitting those emissions that would have been otherwise just released into the atmosphere. Looking at the built environment, electricity use in buildings is 5% of community emissions. There's been a decrease in both electricity use overall and emissions, pretty substantial drop in emissions. So the closing of the WinCup factory, the styrofoam plant in 2014, that's responsible for a big drop in electricity emissions that you see around that time. And then there's also been increased installation of rooftop solar and energy efficiency that have reduced electricity consumption. Then on the emission side, our electricity has a much lower carbon intensity than it used to. So in 2021, PG&E electricity was a mix of renewable, large hydro, nuclear, and natural gas. Overall was 91% greenhouse gas free. MCE's light green electricity was similar, with mostly renewables and hydroelectric. It was 92% greenhouse gas free. And then also this year, about 7% of MCE electricity customers in Corte Madera were deep green with MCE, which is of course 100% renewable. So you can
7%?
Yeah, 7%. So you can see on this graph here, the red line showing emissions have really dropped down, even though electricity use hasn't changed that much. The emissions from electricity have changed a lot. And that is not true for emissions from natural gas. Those track usage exactly. and there's no changing that. So that is about 21% of our community emissions. And I'm going to stop there. I also asked Christine to go over some of the building inventory analysis, but you all have already seen that. It was just going to be an opportunity for you to ask questions directly to her. So any questions on the inventory?
Yeah, so I mean, the electricity and the gas, you can get a direct measurement on. How have they done the miles traveled? Because it looked in the sort of source table at the end, like it was based on some average metric of, I don't know what they use for their baseline, but it doesn't seem like an actual metric of miles traveled, right? So,
right. So it's a model, basically.
Yeah.
It's modeling that.
So the things that we do around getting people to mode switch onto bikes, for instance, wouldn't be picked up in this sort of. So in tracking our progress towards the goal, it's difficult to get actually the real number around the single biggest category of emissions based on this type of analysis.
That's a good question for Christine. I'm not sure how specific that modeling is for Madera.
Okay.
I know the sort of language that's used around it is that it's modeling trips that either start or end in Puerto Madera, but I don't know the exact sort of calculations that the model does. So I can ask Christine to provide some more information on that.
That'd be great. Yeah, to understand the methodology, because it's the biggest category for us.
And there was, I recall, there was consideration about whether there's traffic running through. It's not all generated by Corte Madera residents.
Right. So it's looking at trip generators. So it would count.
So it's going to the shopping center and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it would
so
count.
Within town, yeah.
If it starts or ends in Corte Madera, that was the definition.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
But how are they actually measuring it? That's the.
I think the climate action plan describes the methodology. I'm sure Christina can answer, but I think it's in the plan as well.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. Yeah, and the other thing that we're not tracking, as far as I can tell, is changes in modality, whether people are taking more public transportation. We know the data around electric vehicles, which is great. But the walking, biking, public transportation piece is something that we're trying to get people out of cars and start using, especially public transportation. That's something that maybe Marin Transit can help us with.
Yeah, I would expect Marin Transit or TAM would be tracking that.
Yeah. That would be helpful information too, just to track over time. If we have I don't know that we have a baseline on that, but that would be helpful.
I have two questions. For one, did Christina see any impacts from COVID in the data that would cause it to look higher or lower than it would have otherwise? That was one question. And then remind me, are these are absolute numbers? It's not per capita.
Correct.
These are absolute. So
yeah.
And did Corte Madera grow or shrink? Or probably stayed about the same.
Stayed about the same.
We've got something like just under 4,000 residences and about 10,000 population.
And we aren't getting any bigger. Huh?
No, it's insignificant change.
Yeah.
Yeah, there hasn't been any real development, right?
Not since 10.
Right, but this is still just tracking 2021, so.
Right. A couple years back.
Any other questions or Christina or Phoebe?
I'm tracking modality, and then I think the thing that we need to continue talking about is the difference between residential community emissions and how we can move those metrics versus municipal emissions and what the town is doing specifically. So much of how we're going to move people is through building code, right? But there's so much more that people can be doing when they're not actually doing a new building or doing a remodel. So that's a piece that I don't want us to lose track of as we try and tackle the biggest part of the emissions here, which are not the town, the municipal emissions.
Any other comments or thoughts? No? Phoebe, is there anything else on the topic?
Yeah, that's it to me.
I have a question, not to, I want to be obnoxious. I've always wondered this.
Please be
Why does it take almost 2 years to get the report? I'm curious about that.
So my understanding is that it just has to do with the delay in providing some of that data. So we do request, all the cities and towns request their information from PG&E, for example, for the electricity and natural gas use, and it takes them some time to compile that. And I think Christine could probably speak better to exactly how that process works, but that's my understanding. It's just a delay. And
it's a good question.
It's an important question. Yeah.
So is the thought you'll come back in our next meeting with insights from Christine? Is that what you're thinking?
yeah, I can either report back at the next meeting or just send you one email and say hear back from her.
Since we're in public, maybe bring it to the public session rather than an email. Anything else? No. Okay. Here, no action on that. So, item number 4B, discussion of climate action work plan for 24-25. This we have to do. We can't wait 2 years for this.
Exactly.
Okay. Just a minute for plant my next PowerPoint. All right, so this item is part of the annual work plan process that we started this year. This year was the first annual climate action work plan. And the committee discussed this year's work plan in March of this year, just due to the timing with my starting in December. But this year, the process is going to align with the overall staff work plan, which is normally discussed by council in January. So that's why we're having this discussion now, even though it's only been about 7.5 months since the committee discussed and council adopted this year's work plan.
And just to be clear, the work plan is aligned with the fiscal year, which ends June 30th.
So it's actually not, it's aligned with the calendar year.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
So when it says the end of the year, it really is 2023 or 2024 and not the fiscal year, even though it's a 23-24 work plan.
Right, that's sort of a nod to the fact that many of the items take multiple years to complete. So yeah, you'll be seeing that many of the items that are on the draft work plan for next year are sort of rolling over from next year, from this year's work plan. So that's why the 24 is in there, not because it's a fiscal year work plan. So first, just wanted to highlight the progress that has been made so far in these 7 or so months. Staff and this committee have evaluated the county's model reach codes and conducted community outreach, including a mailer that was sent out to all residents, a community workshop, and some tabling, that was all strategy 1 on this year's work plan. The town is enrolled in MCE's EV charging technical assistance program to look at where we can put more public EV charging stations at sites that this committee has recommended. And the Climate Action Committee completed a EV acceleration work plan at their last meeting. That was the second part of strategy 2 on this year's work plan. The committee has really put a lot of effort into community outreach and education this year, including creating an outreach strategy, updating the website and tabling materials, and tabling at the farmers market, Lions Club car show, and Amy's going to be going into more detail on summarizing the outreach efforts and planning for next year at the December meeting. And the town replaced 5 gas water heaters with heat pump water heaters through a program offered by Marin Energy Watch Partnership. And town council adopted Fort Madero's reusable foodware ordinance in October of this year, which was strategy 7. So a lot of items moving forward. Only 1 out of the 11 strategies on this year's work plan has not been started at all, and that's the fee schedule update. But at the same time, only 2 of those 11 strategies have been fully completed, and those are the last 2 on there, the water heater replacement and the foodware ordinance. So many of the strategies are still in progress, and those are strategies that are proposed to continue on to next year's work plan. So there's 8 strategies on the draft 24-25 work plan that was included in your agenda packet. And most of those are coming directly from the 23-24 work plan. There's a couple that, like the EV work plan, are sort of the next phase of strategies that were on this year's work plan. And like the current work plan, the draft addresses state legislation like SB 379 and 1383, and they align with countywide efforts around encouraging EV adoption and promoting building electrification. So I'm going to go through these 8 strategies one by one and sort of talk about how they relate to what was on this year's work plan. The first strategy on the draft is moving the EV work plan into action. So this year, the committee reviewed the countywide EV acceleration strategy and made recommendations on what strategy the town should be pursuing. Next year, we're hoping to move those strategies into action. And there were 3 sort of high priority actions that were bolded on that EV strategy work plan. And those are ones that are both high priority and will likely involve a lot of staff time. So those are the 3 that are up here. The public EV charging installations, which is already in progress, but will hopefully be moving into the implementation phase next year. Engaging with large employers and multifamily property owners to really encourage those shared private charging stations that we think will be a need. And then on the municipal side, developing a fleet replacement plan to make sure that we are complying with state law and going beyond state law to transition our fleet to electric vehicles. Second item on here is also
these are kind of beefy. Do you want, if people do have questions or comments, do you want to?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't. I just on the previous slide, I just the 3-part workshop that you and I have been participating in, and we had the final session today. That's the counties developing their work plan.
Right. So that's actually one of the strategies that's on here.
Okay.
So we'll get to talk about the counties.
Is the fleet replacement plan, what is the state's requirement there?
The state's requirement, I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it's basically saying a certain percentage of fleet purchases need to be all electric.
For municipalities?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so we need to, at the very least, start tracking that because it's going to be a reporting requirement, but we hope to go beyond that requirement. Any other questions on this strategy?
Thank you.
I do have a question about the on the EV acceleration strategy work plan. The timing in this draft is by 2026, by 2026, which just seems a long ways out.
Yes, so that's sort of in recognition that there's multiple items on the EV work plan. So while it's listed as one strategy here, it's it's, I don't even know how many items are on here. There's multiple items. And so it's meant to be a 2-year work plan, even though it's being incorporated into this work plan, which is our focus area for the next year.
But so if it's all of 24 and all of 25 and all of 26.
No, so 2024 and 2025.
But it says timing says by 2026
Right.
on the draft. Do you want to change that to end of 2025?
So that's clear. Yeah.
Well, I mean, by 2026 could be any time in those 12 months of 2026. It's not January of 2026
That was how I intended it, but I can.
Yeah, I think it could be a little bit clearer.
More precise.
Yeah. And end of year 25.
Our own feet with fire here. It's good.
Okay, so strategy 2, green building code. This is one that was started this year, and a lot of the community outreach, as noted, was completed this year. We still do not have any update from the Ninth Circuit Court about what's going on with the lawsuit in Berkeley. So on the advice of our town attorney, we're pausing on bringing this to the town council for consideration. And so it's carrying forward. Any questions on this one?
Just frustration.
Yeah.
Okay, so the third strategy is again community outreach. And this will be again a topic to be discussed more at the next meeting. Amy's going to lead that item. Last year we had, well, this year there were 2 additional items really focused on education around building electrification. And so staff are proposing here that be combined into this overall outreach strategy, as those are really priority goals that the committee wants to focus on educating on that topic in particular, just for simplicity and clarity about the task we want to complete.
And you said Amy's going to bring more to the December meeting, but I'll report out, just add to this, that Amy and I are active on a couple different ways. One is with the Mariner Cove Homeowners Association.
Great. All right. So 4 is the countywide electrification plan. That process, as Dave noted, is ongoing. So we had the 3rd and final stakeholder workshop this morning. Those have been really productive, and county staff, Brian Reyes, is leading that effort and moving towards having a draft available in January of 2024. So that's the timeline for completion there, and then be expecting to have a conversation with this committee and with other staff about how to move that electrification plan into action, and both at the town level as well as at the countywide level through NCEP.
30-second report out. The 3rd session was today, and what's been really impressive is the attention towards developing equitable approaches to electrification. It's been really consistent. And I think the county's doing a really good job at this, because in part, where the county goes, it's more likely Corte Madera and other places are going to go.
So is this really focused on building electrification, or are we also looking at, or is it the bigger picture of the grid and transmission and distribution also being looked at in this process, and microgrids?
Microgrids in particular, I don't believe has come up, but yes, it is looking at how do we engage with PG&E and make sure that Marin will have the grid capacity to electrify.
And has anyone brought up zonification?
Yes.
Okay, good.
We discussed, yeah. Yes, and it will be available, I believe, for public comment when the draft comes out.
Which is maybe
January, February of next year.
Thank you.
And the to-do for this committee is just to participate in that and make sure we're up to speed on it and.
Right, give feedback. So Dave has been participating on behalf of the committee, but I think there'll be also an opportunity for others to get involved. And then once it's complete, to be part of the conversation about what aspects that Corte Madera can take on.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
That's great. Do you know if any other counties are pursuing this process?
I believe so. Well, I'm not sure about the county level, but I know the city of Berkeley has developed an electrification plan. There are others working on it, yes. So we're looking at those as part of this process.
Can you share with us what those counties might be?
I can look into it.
Oh, thank you.
Is PG&E actually involved in this, Dave?
No, they're a stakeholder, but they aren't involved in the creation of policy. It's really one of my comments from today was that there's 6 main stakeholders that will be held to be responsible, and the idea was to form a coalition or a forum where those different parties can meet. But no, it was representatives from the city, from the towns, all the different jurisdictions in the county.
Okay, so it's a policy effort.
Yeah,
but at some point it needs to be, the dossier to be connected with the utilities, right?
Yeah, it's more of a position and a policy to deal with PG&E and MCE than it is to bring them in now.
So MCE has been participating.
Yeah,
Sebastian Kahn from MCE has been participating in these discussions and on the steering committee. And then with the stakeholder workshops, the idea has been to get a broader perspective. So there's been contractors, realtors, other members of the building community, advocates from different groups participating in these to get feedback along the way.
And PG&E is a member of the stakeholder group, but they don't attend? What is that?
No, I don't believe that I've met anyone from PG&E that's been attending those that I've
They haven't been missed. Right. Really
I understand, believe me, I understand.
The intent, as I saw, was to get the voice of others that don't often have a voice into the process, and for the county to include their comments into new policies, not to focus so much on PG&E. Even MCE's presence was really small.
Interesting. What about the water district?
I don't know. I'm not aware of there.
This is more about training and education policy around electrification of homes and businesses. Really, that was the focus. A lot on EV and how do we electrify mobility on all of the county holdings.
The county holdings.
So it's the county holdings, but where the county goes.
So that again is a municipal approach, county holdings, or talking about the county jurisdiction?
I understood it was county jurisdiction.
Okay,
sorry.
got it. Yeah,
that's a better,
unincorporated county land. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
And is it also promoting renewable energy, like solar adoption, or is it much more about endpoint load converting from gas to oil?
Mostly endpoint load.
Okay.
A lot of discussion about panels and inclusion of PV, but mostly endpoint load.
Yeah. No, at some point
mostly just getting off of gas. And
yeah. I mean, just think, at some point the desire to do that and the progress towards it is great, but there are some kind of restrictions in terms of the grid that need to be addressed at some point. Energy storage and time of use and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I wonder if that. Yeah, I understand. I wonder if that's an issue for the county or the state or the
CPUC.
The CPUC, really,
We don't seem particularly.
But if it's we're talking about zonification and T&D, transmission and distribution in PG&E's territory, I mean, MC is putting those electrons on the grid, but it's still PG&E who is doing the TMD and needs to be part of, and we've had this conversation about stranded assets, and that will continue to come up as we are pruning our gas distribution. But to not have PG&E involved in the conversation, maybe it's preliminary, maybe it's too early for that.
Or you want to get a unified message and put it, say,
And then
PG&E,
bring them
say,
in,
this is what we want.
then bring them into, because in order to do an electrification plan, they have to be partners in that, don't they?
I think that there was so much ground that needed to be covered.
Right.
With residences and businesses.
Got it. So
Yeah,
that
PG&E
next
is
level
definitely
is
part of the discussion we're having is how do we best, work with PG&E going forward to achieve these goals.
Yeah.
So we're definitely thinking about it.
excellent. Okay, thank you. Thanks for answering all those questions.
Good stuff.
All right, moving on to the reusable food ordinance. This was on last year's work plan as to consider. Town council has since adopted Corte Madera's reusable food ordinance, so that will be moving into implementation next year. Enforcement begins July 1st, and there'll be staff from several departments supporting the education and enforcement of that ordinance.
Question about enforcement. Will the county be doing that, since they do all the inspections of restaurants and they do all the inspections of the weights and measures in supermarkets?
So because Corte Madera adopted our own version of the county's ordinance, the county will not be enforcing ours. So our code enforcement team will be enforcing our reusable food ordinance.
Interesting. Okay. Someone to keep in mind.
Any other questions?
Is that a heavy lift for staff? Do we actually have enough bandwidth in the FTEs that we have on staff to do that, to do the enforcement?
I'm happy to answer that, Phoebe, if that's helpful. Yeah, I mean, this was discussed with council. We've sort of approximated how much proactive enforcement we'll be able to do, which is, we're thinking about 4 to 5 different food vendors a year. The total universe of food vendors that it would be subject to the ordinance is about 40 to 45, depending on how many are actually operating at the time. There's some vacancies and whatnot that go in and out of business. And then obviously there's complaint-based enforcement as well. And I think there's a significant part that's going to be required for staff to sort of train our own staff, in particular our code enforcement officer, on the provisions of the ordinance itself, which is much more simpler than the county's ordinance, which I sort of struggle to think how they're going to actually do their work efficiently and effectively. But that there is still some work to do on that end, and certainly education for our business community. And we do have anyway, so I think we're in good shape. It's going to be, don't know for sure exactly how it will play out, but I think many of our restaurants are close to compliant, if not compliant already. So it's a matter of just following up and ensuring that we're providing food vendors with the resources they need to comply, and that we're, making sure that they do once the ordinance goes into effect. And we're also, even though the county's not going to be enforcing ours, we are in close communication with them. So we're using the same resources. And maybe one day we will have, reopen that discussion, because there may be opportunities there for having them actually help us enforce the ordinance in town. So, I think we're ramping up and prepared to enforce it when it goes into effect.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions on the food order? So item 6 is a environmentally preferable purchasing policy, an EPPP. And this is sort of tangentially related to this strategy we had last year related to complying with SB 1383, which is the state's short-lived climate pollutants strategy. And Zero Waste Marin, our JPA that's focused on waste reduction, is actually going to be taking on most of the requirements of that law for jurisdictions going forward. So it's not going to be as much of a lift on our staff. However, we are still required to comply with the recycled paper purchasing requirements of SB 1383. So that's something that having an environmentally preferable purchasing policy will help us with, as well as incorporating other ways that we can be more sustainable in our municipal purchases. That's what this item is focused on. Any questions?
What year? It says by end of year. Would that be end of 2024?
Yes.
When we talk about EPP, it seems like it's really outside of the scope of this committee, but I still think that we might have some input on that, maybe. There's so much upstream and downstream in the purchasing world. And so defining what environmentally preferable purchasing is could be pretty broad. Is it all 100% recycled paper instead of cutting down trees to make paper, or toilet paper for that matter? Is it sustainable coffee that you buy? I mean, it's like, it could be so broad, but it's important, and it's being done in a number of places. So we wouldn't have to be reinventing the wheel.
Right.
But when we're talking about environmentally preferable, it's what's the carbon footprint of producing. That's where it gets into more of what this committee might be involved with. So the carbon footprint of the manufacturing, distribution, the upstream carbon issues, as well as methane and NOx, would be something we might want to talk about as this starts to be developed.
Yeah, I think we could definitely edit that for the committee role where it says none there. We can edit that to provide a comment, and just like us to bring that to you. I think it primarily, initially at least, needs to be a staff conversation with all the departments and seeing, where there's opportunities for improvement and where that makes sense. But yeah, I can see a role for this committee, and if you all are interested in commenting and providing suggestions.
Well, EPPP can be defined in so many ways, and it'd be great if we could lead on that or follow others who are leading and really walk our talk, as they say.
Because the inventory is activity-based, not consumption-based. Do you think that the current inventory would even include purchasing? As I kind of saw that as scope 3.
Yeah, so it does depend on how you define what the scope is of the policy. And I think that's still an open question. It could potentially relate to fossil fuel use and appliance purchases, whether those appliances use fossil fuels or not.
Is this like including contractor bids and that kind of thing here?
That's also an open question. Okay. Some EPPs do.
That's probably where the big bulk of the emissions are coming from. Gelati trucks and whatever else, right?
Right. The county's done a lot of work on that and might be valuable as a touchstone for discussion or advice.
Okay, Great, thank you. So I'll make that edit that the committee would like to have a discussion about the purchasing policy. All right, strategy 7, automated solar permitting. This is to comply with SB 379, and we're required to implement that by September 30th, 2024. The state law.
Can do it faster.
Potentially. We'll see. So this year's item was to begin researching solar permitting systems. There's pretty much only one out there that jurisdictions are adopting, and they're still working through some of the kinks with that. So I'm hoping by the time we get it implemented, it's a really smooth process. But yes, I'll be starting to work on that.
What is the company? What is the?
It's called Solar App Plus.
Okay, yeah, I know it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's developed by, I believe, a national energy.
I think it's NREL, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, well, one other thing to note about that system is that it does also can do automated approvals of battery backup systems, and they're working on expanding it to other permit types. So depending on how it goes with the solar, there's a potential to sort of streamline other permitting processes with that tool.
It's limited to small solar systems, isn't it?
Yeah, there's certain restrictions on what kind of solar systems can use it.
This is residential or only or?
Residential, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. And then finally, the fee schedule update. This is the only item that was not started this year. So it is carrying forward as it was pretty much, except that now the planning and building departments are the community development department. And that's a goal for all those departments to update their fee schedules. It's been since 2015. And as part of that, as we've discussed with this committee, considering how we might be able to incorporate some incentives as part of that.
We're going to be busy next year.
Great to see this stuff start to roll out. I'm excited about this.
So those are the 8 strategies that are on the draft. And this agenda item is to ask for your feedback on that, whether there's anything. We've already got a couple edits, which is great. If there's anything else you'd like to change. And the timeline for this moving forward is the council will be having their strategic work plan session in late January, and that's when they'll be discussing the overall staff work plan that this will be incorporated into with your feedback. And then that's anticipated to be approved by council in February next year.
So we did get this one comment from Mr. Tim Walsh. Do you want to, is now the time to bring this in?
Alan, did you have any comments on that?
Thanks. Yeah. And hi, everyone again. I was just going to comment on the fact that I think you can see that a lot of what's has been on the work plan already, but also that what's moving forward, how it really is touching on really all departments within the town, from community development over to public works to administration. And so that was really, I know, one of the goals, even starting this work and bringing Phoebe on board, and why Phoebe sort of tied in with our administration team is that it is obviously a crosses and affects all aspects of town work, to sort of start to make progress on our climate action, environmental sustainability, and just greenhouse gas reduction goals. So anyways, as Phoebe's going through that, it occurred to me that was, I just appreciate that from Phoebe and from all of you, just the way that we're trying to, the tentacles of this work is sort of reaching all departments and activities. So thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, lots we've it's a remarkable to me when you look back and already, you know, it's Phoebe hasn't been here quite almost a year, which is great. And I mean, time goes fast on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's just remarkable to comment on how much we've been able to already sort of create the framework to sort of accomplish a lot here. And so it's exciting to see this now build into the next year and coming years and make additional progress. So
thanks for all your support, Adam. I appreciate it.
I think for a new committee that's been around just a little, I think we're paving a way for the future committees to follow, and it's based on the success of and the work of Phoebe and you, Adam. So thank you.
Team effort all around.
Yep.
Yes, so this would be the time for public comment. We did receive one email public comment before the meeting, which was provided to you all and was posted on the website as well. Checking for live public comment, and I don't see any.
I mean, I'm sorry.
Let's just see if there's live comment first.
There's no live.
Oh, there's not. So, did anybody have any specific comments to the comment or that you all have?
That was great.
Yeah, I'm 100% in support of what is being suggested by Mr. Walsh. We desperately need a tree ordinance that allows for habitat, that allows for shade, and carbon sequestration.
We were just talking about tree ordinance in our last walk.
So it was good. Yes, I'm sorry.
So San Rafael is creating a tree ordinance. I think it was San Rafael is creating a tree ordinance, and my question is, how does this fold into any of the 8 initiatives that you have up there, or if we wanted to do this, how would the town go about executing on this item from the action plan?
So the
just
town
to add to that, there's none of these points address adaptation or sequestration. So this is very much a mitigation oriented action plan. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it struck me when that came up that we haven't really addressed.
Right. So that is intentional, and I should have mentioned this is specifically a climate action work plan, because that's what this committee is tasked with, is the action side, the mitigation, greenhouse gas reduction.
But sequestration is part of that, and that's not in here. So
that's
right.
True. Yeah.
So in addition to this work plan, staff, myself, also work on the adaptation side, and there's projects moving forward on that side as well. That are not represented on this work plan, but are taking, you know, a significant amount of staff time. In relation to the tree ordinance, the town does already have several policies that relate to trees. We have a tree ordinance that requires that a permit be applied for if someone is wanting to remove a tree that's over, I believe, 50
inches.
And, yeah. And so those permits are reviewed by our planning staff, and they determine whether there's a real need to take out the tree and whether there'll be a required replacement of the tree when it's removed. Our planning commission, also as part of the design review process, has a finding that relates to landscaping, so they can also require replacement of trees if there'll be any disturbed or removed during a construction project. And can probably speak better to any of the other policies that are around related to tree policies. So it's not that we don't have any policies related to trees. I think what the commenter is suggesting is potentially some improvements and really expressing a desire to see an increased tree canopy.
I didn't go back to look at the 2020 climate action plan, but does it say specifically planting of 10 new trees on public land?
No, it doesn't. But it does talk about planting trees on public land.
It does have goals related to tree planting.
Which I think is important because it's something that everybody touches and sees. Like, why are they planting all these trees? You know, well, to sequester carbon. It's a learning sort of model.
I had a question for Adam, maybe, but there was this, I forget the organization that had the tree program where you
Relief.
Oh,
I think it's Relief.
where you could
LEAF.
get free trees to put in your parkway strip.
Yes, the beautification committee used to run a street tree program,
Right.
which they stopped doing during the drought.
Drought.
And they have not yet restarted it, and we have had conversations with them about restarting it.
So planting, little saplings, they don't start actually sequestering carbon for many, many, many years, sometimes decades, depending on the species. So I think one issue that I hear, and for the last several years have heard chainsaws and chippers almost every day. And I would guess that most people are not getting permits to take out trees on their property. I know that when there is a new property being developed or there's a significant remodel, that gets reviewed, but
The maintenance.
I just doubt that all of the people who've been taking out trees left and right because of a perhaps misdirected understanding of fire danger. I'm just going to guess that most of them have not taken out permits first or had it reviewed.
So
perhaps I'm wrong about that.
Comment on that a little bit. So we're a WUI, right? So for those of you who live in a WUI, this is a huge issue.
It is.
But I have to say, there's a lot of pressure, and rightly so, to take out eucalyptus, acacia, so these very fire-prone species. And I think the town's permitting requirement around taking out large trees is very much of a passive type of policy. So whether it's right or wrong, but there's obviously not been any effort to kind of provide guidance about, okay, you've taken out these big eucalyptus, which were a big fire hazard. They also don't live very long, so they tend to fall over on people's houses.
Right.
So that's a problem. But there's been nothing sort of proactive. We took out a bunch of eucalyptus. We took out acacia that was below the permit requirement size. A lot of our neighbors have as well. The town took out a whole bunch of stuff down by Granada Park, thankfully, because of the total fire trap. But there's been no communication or plan presented as far as I can see of, if you'd like to replant the trees, here are some species we recommend, here are some vendors who can help, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Which, because as the person commented here, it's not just about, carbon sequestration. There's a lot of other benefits that you get in terms of shade and temperature regulation and biodiversity and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like, to me, like a relatively low cost, easy win to at least provide some information for people about what to replant, how to replant, who can help, all that stuff. So I think that was a great comment.
I wanted to go one step further. I wondered if the committee would have the appetite to recommend as a comment to the plan that the town create a street tree master plan.
But it's not the street, it's personal, it's private property.
As for the town, I'm most interested in a street tree master plan, but that doesn't because I think that's easier for us in this body to act on. But that doesn't mean that if there was interest in going beyond street trees, we should hear about that as well. But I was inspired by listening to somebody who was talking about San Rafael. I thought it was San Rafael or Novato was pursuing a street tree master plan for all of these reasons.
I'm pretty sure it's San Rafael.
Yeah, San Rafael.
Yeah, they've had a lot of issues with 4th Street, the trees.
Yeah.
So Phoebe, if that falls under adaptation and not action, that is our purview on the mitigation side. I think that our town did have, I think so too. I absolutely think so, but I'm just trying to sort that out right now.
No, I agree. I think
I mean,
definitely an overlap there. So,
Mhm.
I mean, the town could decide is it for this committee or for not, but I think we have the ability to make, if we choose to make a recommendation for something like a street tree plan for the town.
I think that there should be a tree plan, absolutely. And I think we used to have one. Ed Hume, when he was on staff 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I'm pretty sure that the town, he was the town arborist, and on staff. And I think we had a tree plan, but beats me if we do now or if it's been updated. No idea. But yeah, that's something that goes with, I mean, it goes with the beautification of this beautiful town at the same time. But there's so many benefits to planting the right species in the right places. Do we want to?
So is there appetite to make a recommendation for a street tree plan?
I would go beyond street
And take it to private.
I think it's a tree plan. Or
Tree
a tree, yeah, call
And
it
maybe
plan
it's
for now, but it's
tree plan and it's part A and part B, perhaps the
Yeah.
municipal and
there's
the
municipal on
and
the
community, yeah. I don't know.
Any thoughts?
I agree with it.
I agree.
I mean, the plan.
Adam's tearing
Follow
the
this
hair out
through.
already.
Adam's written.
No, I think one of the things that we could do, there's, as Phoebe mentioned, we have policies here and there. They do some things well, they don't do other things well. There's other complications that get into liability, especially around street trees and who maintains those and who's responsible. We certainly could take a more comprehensive evaluation of tree policies and try to, I think, align them in a way that sort of gets at a something that promotes planting of new trees or replacement of trees that sort of are removed for whatever reason that they come down. There's a lot of issues embedded. That's all I'm saying. We've started looking into this, and Phoebe can fill you in. I'm not, but there's a lot of other issues that are embedded in this, particularly around street trees. And just we're dealing with a claim right now of all of them have to put it this way. There's a maintenance program that goes along with this as well that is significant, but we should be doing, and we need to factor that into whatever we do as well. So I think maybe it's around evaluation and a proposal after the evaluation. But I think it's going to take some time and some work and effort to really, do that amongst our public works maintenance team, our park and rec team, our public works engineering team who deals with the streets and roads, legal for sure. And then if we're getting into private property, it is a zoning issue and tree ordinance issue. And then there's fire gets involved as well. So, it's really it is comprehensive, and I think there's room to sort of evaluate it and try to piece all those what right now are separate policies. Fire has their own rules and reasons for why they're we've changed the tree ordinance. I think that was the last time we touched the tree ordinance was like in 2019 with respect to undesirable or species that were more, the fire department said was more fire prone. I think Mr. Walsh is debating that. And I can tell you he's talked to the fire department. They disagree, but so, and then we have the street tree program, the beautification, how do we not only align our policies, but how do we then sort of redirect them in a way that incentivizes, promotes, and encourage, the sort of responsible planting and maintenance of these trees moving forward. And I just look at it. I will say, I certainly coming from the urban planning background, like there's tons of evidence about how important trees are to quality of life, and not just as a climate issue, but just as a well-being and a mental health issue, and it increases property values and lots of benefits of trees all along. But I will say, I find it a little interesting. I look around and I go, you look at the old photos of Corte Madera, back, and the most incredible things that we've done are protecting the open space around the foothills of Mount Tam. And then you look at the Baylands, never had trees originally, and the amount of planting that's been done and the amount of trees that you really see in these areas is already a huge amount of tree canopy compared to essentially the natural environment that existed, on this land going back 100 years. So something just to keep in the back of your mind. I think
it's true.
I think where I'm coming, by the way, Adam, what I hear is that there's opportunity to coordinate the policies that we already have better. And you aren't saying no to the idea about a street tree plan, but in my particular neighborhood on the water side, in the last year, we saw a huge amount of trees cut down in the Parkway Strip because of sidewalk maintenance. And I live there, and I'm not aware of any intentional plan or communication about putting back trees,
right?
Or so I think it's a gap, and so if the idea is to first clean up and straighten out the policies and initiatives that we have in the town, but I'm advocating to have a coordinated plan at the end, or at least evaluate if one should be done.
Yeah, and that you're speaking to a particular, that's the legal one where the homeowner is responsible for the tree outside on their sidewalk, and even though it's in the public right of way. And so when they evaluate whether they want to be liable for that tree or replant it and uplift the sidewalk and create a sidewalk issue, and that's a lot of the reasons why when we do the sidewalk improvement, the homeowner is going to be responsible for fixing the sidewalk. We say we will help you out somewhat with the financial cost of that. And they look at it and they say, well, the roots are what's uplifting the sidewalk. I don't really want to fix it and spend the money and then recreate the problem all over again by planting another big tree there without roots. Now, there are solutions with root barriers and whatnot, but it requires us to educate and develop options for the homeowner, or deal with the actual legal mechanism, which creates this incentive for some homeowners who are just through the rational decision-making process, are sort of saying, well, let me not put a big tree back there. But that does sort of require us to rethink that whole, and basically the decision-making, the incentive that exists through the current sort of legal framework that we have throughout the entire town, on at least who's responsible for that maintenance and liability. But I hear you. I do think we can do, there's certainly more coordination we can do with our sidewalk program and recommendations and education about how to get trees back where they've been taken out on sidewalks and streets. And I think there's more to do there. And
I think I think we're drilling down pretty deep here, but because there is no plan, there is no, we can't have this dialogue. We can't get it. And so this is kind of the role of a civic discourse. How do we guide people to doing the right thing for their neighbors and for the town?
Yeah.
And guess what? There's legal considerations, so we have to talk to lawyers. Get that? But,
no, I get it. I just giving you the context, but I hear you. Yes, there were a lot of trees. I know that example. So,
and there's nothing putting them back, and we don't have a plan for doing so. And I think that Tim wrote a very eloquent letter that, whether you agree or disagree with some of his points he's making, How do we summarize this? Phoebe, did you get what you needed?
Yeah, I think
Let's move on. I think we've drilled down deep enough.
We made a hash of it, yes.
Yeah, I think how I would phrase it, if you all agree, is sort of similar to how Adam did, which is adding an action to evaluate and create a proposal on how to increase tree canopy around town, and not necessarily, we maybe don't know exactly what that's going to look like now, whether it's a tree master plan, whether it's updating policies, whether it's providing resources to homeowners. But that's sort of the overall goal that I'm hearing, is wanting to look at how we can increase replanting and increase trees. Does that sound right?
And stewardship of existing trees.
And maintenance, yeah.
I guess, does it, I was just wondering, does it fall as a part of the action work plan, or is it part of a broader question I had about, is there scope beyond this, for other topics to become part of our action, sort of our work over the course of the year without having them formally be part of this plan? Other things are going to come up, right? It's basically so. Here's an interesting idea. Does it merit being part of the action plan at this point? I mean, I'm all for it, by the way, but I'm just wondering, from a process point of view, do we have a separate category of things we should be investigating alongside the work that we're doing, which we've committed to do as part of the work plan?
Yeah, I think on the committee side, you're always welcome to be doing your own research and work and bringing up topics at the committee meetings that you want to discuss. I think this work plan, as it is pretty full on the staff side. So if there was an additional item that was really a high priority, urgent priority, later on in the year, there'd have to be a discussion about what else is not done.
Well, there's part of the work plan includes water, right?
So this work plan doesn't have anything specific to water on it.
Oh, okay. I thought that there was an item on there that had to do with water resources, and that the tree planting could go hand in hand with that.
So the inventory does include a section on emissions from water.
Yeah,
that's really on Marin Water.
Inventory does, yeah.
Side, yeah.
Well, I would get in light of what you just said, which is it's hard to get. It's going to be hard to get space on the agenda if it's not on this agenda. I would vote to add as a point to have it begin research on the tree plan as part of our action plan.
Okay, I don't think we have to. I think we're all commenting on something, so I don't think we have to vote or anything.
No.
Unless there's somebody that has a huge disagreement with the strategy, but I'm not hearing that.
Okay.
And
are there models of this we could look at?
Yes.
Yes, there are.
Get one or two so that we can wrap our minds around how this gets implemented in other places, so we don't have to reinvent it.
Exactly.
Is there something?
Yes.
They exist.
Share it with us?
I don't have that in my computer, but they're out there, and not reinventing the wheel is a high priority for all of us who want to move faster. So yes, tree ordinances are all over the map, literally and figuratively. So it's just a research project.
Could we make that to be an item to do?
In 2024, yeah.
Well, that's even something that we could do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can just do it. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
But it's more than just ordinances, right? I mean,
It's planning. It's and that's Adam knows this so well. That's such a foundational part of community planning, right?
What a great discussion, but I think we should move on. I think we
Chair
communicated.
being a living force.
Was there any other discussion about the climate action work plan?
I would just, maybe this was already clear to the committee, but I just want to make sure that you're all aware that this was intended to be an item. We heard you loud and clear, like when Phoebe came back and reported on the council's work plan for 2023, that there was a comment back about, it would be nice for the committee to have some potential input into that discussion next time. And so this is what we were trying to do with this agenda item. So thank you, and it's helpful to hear your comments and feedback, and we'll bring this to the council.
It's great, thank you. The work's really appreciated and the communication's appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adam.
So we'll conclude item 4B. Item 5, are there any updates, reports from committee members? Other activities?
Staff report besides what you've already presented?
Only staff item I have is to let you all know that we will be canceling the January Climate Action Committee meeting due to the holidays and vacations. And so our next meeting will still be December 20th. That will be our last Climate Action Committee meeting for this year. And then the first Climate Action Committee meeting of 2024 will be February 21st.
Does that February meeting come after the council's vote on this work plan?
Do you know, Adam, what the timing is going to be on that?
Well, so we're having, I think the tentative date is we're going to have the strategic session with the council, and I think January 30th, and then we'll bring it to the council. It probably will be that second meeting in February for approval. So it might be that might be the day. What is that? Maybe it's the day before. So likely, yes. Second meeting in February is going to be do I have that right? The 20th? February 20th. Yeah.
So if we want to comment, then we should attend that meeting. Or, I mean, it doesn't sound like we're going to have much input or opportunity for comment between December and February.
No, this is kind of our shot.
This is our shot tonight. We have 10 more minutes. We're good. But yeah, so we should at least be paying attention to council conversations at the January meetings and into February is kind of what I'm getting.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
That's the only staff up today.
Okay. Any committee member updates or reports?
I attended that Marin Climate Action Collaborative meeting the day after our last committee meeting, and it was refreshing to hear, be able to talk freely and hear answer some of my questions, and it was a lively conversation. One was a recommendation for, we talked about a student ambassador, and Suzanne Saunders is the chair of the San Anselmo Climate Action Committee. And Jody Tim said that she was a great resource for finding students. Okay. Because they've done that before. Another thing that was mentioned was that the city of Santa Clara moved their goal for carbon neutrality from 2045, their 2045 goal, they brought back to 2030.
Wow.
An aggressive move.
Wow.
And there was also a suggestion about promote the Climate Action Committee's work, that perhaps a link to climate information could be put on the front page of the homepage of the town. And another suggestion was made about Nextdoor. I think a lot of people drop climate information onto the Nextdoor. Like, I know I've done that a couple times in response to those things. I also talked about the e-bike issue that you and I had talked about, Pat, and I know that Bart it's kind of off the topic of that meeting, but I think BART in the East Bay and Oakland, they put some of these, they got bike blocking devices and
On the trains.
Yeah. It was suggested
I think SMART does too.
that you can maybe get funding through TAM to help with that.
To add bike locks, like what, storage?
Yeah, for bike
e-bikes. Parking?
Yeah.
Or let's say secure e-bike parking, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, TAM probably is the source. And Ride and Drive Clean would be a good source for information.
Anyone else? Phoebe, Amy, and I are working on a letter with town letterhead to go out to schools regarding the ambassador program. So I understand you guys reviewed that last meeting, so I won't rehash that again. Exciting stuff. And then we're being asked to give content for the Mariner Cove newsletter that goes out and gets read by a lot of people. So I may reach out to you.
Oh, please do.
On that. Yeah. That's all I had.
I just wanted to mention that Rivian has opened up their charging sites in town center.
Oh.
They have 6 for what they call their adventure network, which is for Rivian owners, but there are 4 that are for the public can use.
Free?
Right now they're free.
Woo!
Yeah, so get on over that. But that's a big deal because it's at town center that we screwed up with earlier.
Right.
So now they're doing it, and that's a good move forward. So I was delighted, and that's going to be in the Chronicles, obviously. But I wanted to make sure that everybody knows that because one of our goals is to expand, accessible. And by the way, they also have 2 ADA accessible sites there as well. So it's been good to hear. Yes, good news for us.
Cool. Any other update or report out? Nope. Maybe future agenda items.
The only one I have on my radar right now is the outreach item for the next meeting. So Amy is planning to bring a summary of outreach efforts this year and then have a planning session for outreach next year.
Great.
One other thing related to Rivian is I saw an electric Amazon delivery truck van here. They have them in Santa Rosa, but apparently they're using them here as well, and they're making them available for others. So for others to use, because Amazon is an investor in Rivian, and so there was some concern about them just allowing them for Amazon, but they've now opened it up, and others will be able to acquire them as well, and they're very slick looking. Those.
Is a delivery van from Rivian?
Yes, Rivian makes the delivery van. The others, DHL and FedEx, have invested in their own ones, but Amazon's ahead of the curve on all this. And what a change to have this silent vehicle go up, instead of puffing the diesel up the driveway. When you live in the hills, it's a big deal. So I was delighted to see that. And I'll let them know it too.
I saw my first Tesla long haul truck on the freeway the other day, pulling a truckload of Pepsi Cola.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and the Department of CEC has issued, we now have an update on electric vehicle penetration and sales. And so I'm going to digest that and put that in an upcoming edition. First glance looks like we've done pretty well, both Marin and California we continue to increase the penetration of electric vehicles in spite of, I mean, you've read about the that some of the companies are not pleased with their sales increases of electric vehicles, but it still is increasing. And I want to have a closer look at that and see what the real truth is.
That's a point that came up in the National Fifth Assessment that was just issued day before yesterday. And I asked Phoebe just to circulate a link for those that are interested.
Good.
It's not that hard to read the summary pages.
Good.
Is there anything else? Okay. I'll adjourn the meeting for tonight.